Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Superchargers. Have we got a great show in store for you today? I'm Gabriel, along with Linda Marshall, and as you know, we generally take you somewhere in these United States for a great motorsports event. You've seen Grand National Stock Car racing on the Superchargers. You've seen AMA motorcycle racing, offshore powerboat racing, truck and tractor pull, just about all of it. Today, even something a little bit different. We're going to take you to McCormick Place here in Chicago, the largest convention center in the world, at least one of them, and you're going to see the International Rod and Custom Show. Some really antique, unique, and bizarre cars.
You know, Jan, the thing I'm looking forward to the most are those wonderful nostalgia cars of the 50s, the Corvettes and the T-Birds. We're also going to be taking a look at some wonderful cars out of the 30s and the 40s, along with some very modern racing cars.
And we're going to meet the people behind some of these great cars.
Like Aggie Hendricks, the fastest woman on wheels, and George Barris. He's the one who makes all those far-out cars for TVs and movies.
Yeah, George is very interesting, a little weird at times, but very interesting. So, come on along. We're going inside McCormick Place on Chicago's beautiful lakefront.
There it is, right up ahead.
McCormick Place, truly one of the largest convention centers in the world.
Hang a left, Jan.
The Superchargers, featuring national championship and unique motorsports events.
These are some of the most exciting and exotic vehicles in the country. They're part of the International World of Wheels Rod and Custom Show. Our backdrop today as we look at some antique, unique, and bizarre cars. This is a 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air convertible, top of the line for its time.
This was the age when the wraparound windshields first came into being, the two-tone paint jobs, and those flashy fins.
Also back in the 50s was the development of high-performance engines. There were models like this that even had fuel injection. Right now, let's take a look at some of the cars from the 1950s. If you grew up in the 50s, you couldn't help but fall in love with the cars of the day. They were big and bold and beautiful, some perhaps a little gaudy. The cars have become, of course, modern classics. There were two-tones, three-tones, and there was lots of chrome. Cruising through the drive-ins in one of these big boats was a real status symbol.
Gonna get a chick that's real pretty, 'cause everybody's headed for Hot Rod City. They call them Rod Cities and cherry little roadsters. Everybody's headed for Hot Rod City. Brand new stocks and competition oldsters. Everybody's going to Hot Rod City. So bring a white car and you get in free, 'cause Hot Rod.
This is the Edsel, unlike any other car you've ever seen. This is the Edsel. This is the Edsel. This is the Edsel. This is the Edsel.
This was the Edsel, a car that went from the assembly line into the history books and back again as an antique winner. Largest pickup truck. This is King Kong. The tires alone are 5.5 feet high. The vehicle has independent steering. The front wheels can go right, while the rear wheels go
And then again, there are dragsters. Suppose you took the 2,000 horsepower Chrysler engine out of this top fuel dragster and dropped in a big jet engine from a fighter plane. Just imagine what you'd have then. You're looking at one of the fastest dragsters in the world. It's jet-powered, and it's driven by a woman, Aggie Hendricks from the south side of Chicago. Aggie, have you always been a Chicagoan?
I'm originally from Western Canada, but I'm currently enjoying the amenities of Chicago.
How did you get started in racing?
Well, I met a fellow from Chicago who was touring with his jet dragster in Western Canada, and he invited me to a drag race, and once I saw what it was all about, I was quite hooked on it.
Every summer, Aggie travels across the country, competing in match races and national events. This past summer, we followed her to Englishtown, New Jersey, where hitting speeds of over 270 miles per hour, Aggie won the event. Aggie, described that race for us.
It was a very hot day in September, which affects the jet engine's performance. Here you see one of the contestants, Guy Zielinski. He's doing burner pops, which is part of our line show. He's running against this gentleman, Craig Arfons, who has a wheel-driven car. They're trying to work the kinks out of this car, and they're getting it up there. Here they're coming up to the lights. Guys, signals.
Starting line here, huh?
Right. He signals for the Christmas tree to come down, indicates that he's ready to leave, and has left. Looks like the wheel-driven car got out ahead of him, but the thrust-powered car gets him a half track and gets him in the end. He got an elapsed time of 5.92 seconds, which is the lowest so far of this meet.
The low ET. For viewers who may not understand, what does low ET mean?
Elapsed time, or low ET, means the time span between start and finish, and the lowest or the quickest is the winner.
Okay, and now you're getting ready here.
Right, we're plugging in the external power supply.
Some heavy concentration there.
That's right. We usually concentrate on what we're doing. That's the master switch. It powers up all the solenoids, and we're on the igniters now. This is my competitor, Joe Petro. He's a very hard-running vehicle he has, and usually a good neck-and-neck race when we run together.
Tough competitor.
Right. This is part of the line show. A lot of fire, a lot of smoke. It looks really fantastic at night. Gets the crowd real revved up.
They look pretty revved up right there.
I think they're enjoying the race as much as we are. This is really a time span when we have a lot of concentration. We're waiting for the tree to come down, and we're both ready to go together into the track.
One long last look at that track.
To make sure you can see where you're going once you get there, it's going to be...
There are the lights again.
Yeah, here we go. It's a very close race. Coming up half track, we're getting him, and we've got him in the end here. It's 5.89, which is the low ET of the meet.
Aggie Hendricks, the winner. The crowd really was behind you that day, too.
They were really supportive, and I'm sure they had a good time.
And we should mention the parachutes. It's very critical, the timing that they have to come out, right?
Oh, it's a matter of life and death.
Oh, and here are the jet funny cars. We have not only jet dragsters, but jet funny cars as well.
They're a wonderfully new addition to the jet industry. It's a very identifiable object for the spectators. They can say, here's my Camaro, it's got a jet engine in it, there it goes. You know, they really enjoy it. Here's Bill McDaniels running against an Australian fellow, Paul Miller. Bill did eventually win this race. The funny cars are less aerodynamic and generally heavier than the dragsters. Therefore, they have a higher ET and lower mile an hour.
And Bill McDaniel, the winner. Aggie Hendricks, we sure do want to thank you for inviting us down to your shop on the South Side today. We wish you all the best in 1984.
Thank you. Glad you came.
For this edition of the Superchargers, we searched everywhere for unique cars and came up with 3 four-wheel creations that were virtually indescribable. Johnny Cash might call this one a 4950, 5160, 6162 Cadillac automobile, but nobody knows for sure, not even the guy who built it. We'll just have to leave it up to your imagination as to what they are. We'll be right back with more on the Superchargers.
We're back. This is a 1937 Ford, but it's not quite the same as it was back in 1937. For instance, this car has a 300 horsepower engine. Back in 37, it was only 60 horsepower. This car also has a lot of other extras, such as power steering, power brakes, a tilt steering wheel, and a whole lot more. Some people say this car was virtually indestructible. I guess we'll always have a love affair with cars from the 30s and 40s. Now, once again, here's Jan.
Thank you, Linda. Here at McCormick Place, we found this really sleek Indy Racer. It has speed capabilities of up to 240 miles per hour. Now, this particular car won the Indianapolis 500 in 1975 when Dan Gurney was the car owner and Bobby Unser was the driver. The real pioneers of the Indianapolis 500 were there 73 years ago when it all began, racing for 500 grueling laps and stripped-down versions of production models. Many were entered by the manufacturers themselves. These first Indy Racers had monster-size engines and would travel the famous Brickyard course at speeds of around 90 miles per hour. The first winner was Ray Haroon. It took him almost 7 hours to cover the 500 miles. Today, the same distance is often completed in less than 3. Because there were no gaskets back then, the engines in these cars weren't properly sealed. Consequently, hundreds of gallons of oil were dumped on the track during the running of the race, causing these lumbering 2,000-pound cars to skid out of control. You're looking at what was the first major crash at the renowned Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Ironically, it was the French and the Germans who showed us how to build genuine racing cars. But it still took the Americans to show the whole world how to stage the greatest spectacle in racing, the Indianapolis 500. This is probably the largest semi-tractor truck in the world today. It's got everything it needs, and it weighs 21,000 pounds.
As a matter of fact, this is really a house on wheels.
Well, it is. It sleeps 4 and has all the accoutrements of home. Big pile carpeting. It's even got an audio-visual system in it.
Not only that, a microwave oven, my favorite.
We traveled to the Wisconsin State Fairgrounds where, along with 35,000 spectators, we watched the first all-American semi-truck race. Trucks are America's movers. They move every conceivable kind of cargo. And every once in a while, you'll even find them on one of our nation's speedways. Here on a mile track in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 20 big rigs took up the challenge of a 200-mile race. And you're looking right now at the cab-overs. They push a lot of wind. One of the real chargers was this truck, the truck driven by Luther Burton of Columbia, Indiana. It's called the Liberty Bell Special and led most of the way. And here, as most racetracks, you'll find a fender bender or two. In this case, it was a real wall banger. This truck was literally torn apart after making contact with the wall. Accidents like this one trigger a rash of pit stops by the leaders, since tire wear is really a big problem for these titans of the turnpike. A blowout can send your $60,000 semi-truck to the junkyard for good. But come Monday morning, there's a good chance you might see one of these big rigs hauling down the highway bound for the marketplace. And after 200 grueling miles of handling these radical rigs, the winner was indeed Luther Burton in the Liberty Bell Special. This particular car is the kit car from the television show Knight Rider. And along with this car, there were hundreds more created by this man, George Barris. George, first of all, let's find out, what was your very first Hollywood car?
Well, the very first one was a 1948 Chevrolet that I did with a movie with Douglas Fairbanks Jr. way back in 1950, and it was called High School Confidential.
Now, I know most people out there will recognize the Batmobile probably as your most popular. Is that fair to say?
That is correct, along with the Munster Coach was another very big favorite, and the Beverly Hillbillies and the Monkey Mobile and quite a few other ones too, but the Batmobile was probably the #1 car.
Do you have any favorites?
Not really, because every car is a different challenge. So actually you can't say a Batmobile is different than a Munster or a kit car or the new car that we did with Hardcastle and McCormick, which is actually a Lola race car. So each one of them are probably a wild-looking vehicles.
All right, now George has brought some great film footage for us to look at. What's the first one we're going to see?
Supervan. This is a $60,000 Dodge van that is completely solar energized, made out of steel, that does many chase scenes and also spin-outs that you'll enjoy in the picture, which is of the same name as you see it coming forward and directly at you.
Now, one of my favorites, one of my all-time favorites was the car.
The car is because it cost $250,000 to roll over that automobile 5 times. It's a James Brolin movie, but actually it's made out of Lincoln Continentals, and we had to power the car made out of steel because rolling over 5 times we had to put a cannon in that car where we'd actually blow the car 20 feet up into the air, had to roll 5 times on the ground, have 2 other cars approaching you at 60 miles an hour, and we had to end up on top of those 2 other automobiles.
Let's talk about your most famous of all, the Batmobile.
Here we are at the Irwindale Raceway. I'm going to show you how a Batmobile can really run.
Now, how many Batmobiles were there?
There was actually 5 of them.
Why 5?
As I said, that Batmobile Adam West, who happens to be one of the world's worst drivers.
You mean Batman was a bad driver?
Well, regretfully, yes, when he drove a passenger car, because he would end up hitting the back of the Batcave every time he went out of that sequence.
Sometimes these cars become more popular than the stars themselves.
Well, in many cases, such as the General Lee from Dukes, it became one of the popular stars of the century because of the fact it did do jumps and all kinds of tricks.
King of the custom car builders, George Barris. In our many travels looking for a real classic car to show you, we found this beauty. It exemplified the style and pizzazz of its owner. This 1935 Duesenberg Special Sports Roadster was owned by one of the most legendary movie stars of all time, Clark Gable. Now you may not know it, but vintage cars like this one compete for recognition, and this one more than holds its own with the cream of the crop. This car has won the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance. It received 100 points in the Classic Car Club of America ratings and collected the President's Cup at the Duesenberg Cord in Auburn show. All after a year and a half of painstaking restoration work by its new owner. It's a very special creation indeed. This car is so rare that only 2 of this model were ever built. Actor Gary Cooper owned the other. The Duesenberg Company built a total of 480 cars between 1929 and 1937. Under the sleek hood reposes a double overhead cam 8-cylinder Lycoming engine. This one is supercharged and idles at 1,000 RPM. It produces so much power that the car is capable of traveling 150 miles per hour, accelerating from 0 to 100 miles per hour in 17 seconds, which is quite rapid when you consider that the car weighs several thousand pounds. This Duesenberg is so specially equipped that it even boasts of a tachometer and an altimeter. It has special hydraulic brakes good for dry weather as well as snow or rain. And it rides on the balloon tires that Duesenberg is credited with introducing to the American automotive scene. The car sits on a 125-inch wheelbase and has a chopped chassis that allows for a special low profile. A 7-inch convertible top disappears into a sleek tail section. Its elegant red leather interior is the finishing touch that enables it to be referred to as the Rembrandt of fine cars. And like Rembrandt would have done, it has many coats of lacquer that have been applied with extreme care. Some experts claim that this Duesenberg is the finest example of vintage cars that they've seen in the last 40 years. We'll be right back with more on the Superchargers. Well, it's time to wrap up another edition of the Superchargers. We hope you've enjoyed the International Ride and Custom Show. I'm Jan Gabriel along with Linda Marshall, and I know Linda enjoyed the day.
I sure did. That Aggie Hendricks, what a daring young woman. Imagine getting into one of those jet dragsters and pushing the go button.
I want to thank all the participants in this great show, and we'll look for you again next time on the Superchargers.
So long.